Hello, everybody. Welcome to Worth and Wealth. My name is Carrie Palazzo. I'm from the Office of Economic Empowerment. Today, we are talking about scam and fraud prevention. And we are joined today by Lisa Schifferle from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Lisa Weintraub Schifferle is a senior policy analyst in the CFPB's Office for Older Americans, leading programs on financial caregiving, scam awareness, and elder financial exploitation. With over 25 years in consumer protection, she previously worked at the FTC as identity theft coordinator, trainer, and litigator, and at Maryland Legal Aid representing low-income clients. Lisa holds a BA from Yale and a JD from the University of Virginia School of Law. Lisa, thank you so much for being here today with us. Today we're going to be talking about scam and fraud prevention with a lens and focus on older adults. I would just encourage everybody to take in information, good reminders, good news or good information for all of us, regardless of where we are in the continuum of our adulthood, younger or older or mid. And again, just a reminder, as the Worth and Wealth programs have done and will do for this one, we're going to send an email later this week with information and resources on scam and fraud prevention. We'll have a recording of today's webinar, and we'll also have the slides. So one thing I would think about is maybe there are people in your family and in your life that you want to send the recording to and send the slides to as great reminders. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and start the slides. And again, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here today.
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks so much for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Schifferle. I'm with the CFPB's Office for Older Americans. And today I'm going to share with you some trends related to scams and some tips on how to avoid those scams, as well as resources that you can use to help prevent scams in your community. And while the focus is on older adults, as Carrie said, this is information that is good for anyone, regardless of age. So before we begin, I have to give you a quick disclaimer. On the next slide, please, which is just that this presentation is being made by a CFPB representative, but it does not constitute legal interpretation, guidance, or advice of the CFPB, and any opinions or views stated are my own opinions and may not represent the Bureau's views. Next slide, please. If you're not familiar with the CFPB, we are a federal government agency that is designed to make sure that banks and lenders treat people fairly. I work in the Office for Older Americans, so we're specifically focusing on adults who are 62 and older, as well as financial caregivers or anyone else who works with someone who's older. And we work to try to help protect older consumers from financial harm and also help people make good financial decisions as they grow older. You can find out more about us at consumerfinance.gov/older-Americans. So let's start with some trends about fraud. This is based on the Federal Trade Commission's Consumer Sentinel data. They have the best database of fraud-related complaints, the most comprehensive one. And this is 2023 data. You may be wondering about the 2024 data. That's still being tabulated, and the FTC usually releases that in February. So that should be out soon. But for now, we're looking at 2023 data. And what you see here is that the FTC received 5.4 million reports for $10 billion in fraud loss in 2023. So that's a slight increase from 2022 and has been going up during the pandemic and after the pandemic. So the top three types of reports that the FTC received were, number one was identity theft, two was imposter scams, and three was credit bureau and credit reporting issues. So we're going to focus a lot on the imposter related scams and identity theft in this presentation. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see information about financial loss due to scams. So of all the people who reported fraud or scams, only 27% reported losing money to the fraud. And this is important because we know that if you can recognize scams, you're less likely to lose money to them, which is why it's so important that you all are listening to this presentation today. And we hope you'll pass on the information to others who are not on the presentation so they can benefit from it as well. So let's look at some trends related to age and scams. The next slide shows interesting data about older adults and scams. Again, this is from FTC's Consumer Sentinel. And contrary to what many people believe, a lot of people think of the vulnerable older adult, but the FTC Sentinel data actually shows that younger adults are more likely to report losing money to scams than older people. So as you'll see on the left here, 44% of people in their 20s reported a loss compared with 25% of people in their 70s. However, if you look at the right side of the slide here, you'll see that when older adults do lose money, they report much higher dollar losses than younger people. So you'll see a median dollar loss of $1,450 for people over age 80, compared to only $480 for people in their 20s. So you can see from this data why it's so important for us to focus on this issue of scams and older adults. The next slide shows the same thing, just different people may appreciate different visual representations. So in this one, you'll see that yellow line shows the percentage of people with a fraud loss. So as we get older, people are reporting losses due to frauds decline. But if you look at those blue-green bars, that shows the amount of the loss. So as I mentioned before, the loss amount increases with age. Next slide, please. This slide shows the top frauds reported to the FTC by the number of reports. So you'll see the top reports are imposters, online shopping, prizes, investment scams, and business opportunity scams. The highest dollar losses, if you look in that third column there, are from investment scams and imposter scams. So I'll focus on them a bit more in a few minutes. First, let's look at some trends related to payment methods. And these are the methods that scammers ask people to use when they're asking for payment for the scam. Next slide, please. The left side of the chart shows how often people use a particular payment method to pay scammers, while the right side shows how much money they lost when using that payment method. So you can see that the most frequent methods requested by scammers are credit card and debit card on the left there. But on the right, you'll see the highest dollar loss methods are bank transfers or cryptocurrency. So if there is a scammer requesting payment by bank transfer or cryptocurrency, that is a red flag. Next slide, please. The contact methods are also interesting to note because they can help you spot red flags of a scam. And email or phone are still far and away the top method by frequency of use. You'll see at the top of the slide. But if you look at the light green line, you'll see the dollar loss is highest when scammers contact you through social media, online ads, or pop-ups or websites and apps. The last trend I want to show you is some of the top fraud losses for people ages 60 plus. And you'll see this is by dollar loss. And the biggest ones are investment scams, business imposters, and romance scams. So we are going to discuss some of those in a minute. So now let's turn our discussion to tips for recognizing and preventing scams. Next slide, please. I'll focus on these scams because these are some of the big scams affecting older adults. There's the tech support scam, online dating or romance scam, mortgage closing scams, investment scams, and family imposters. Let's start with the online dating scams, also called romance scams or sweetheart scams. This is when someone meets you online and they start what seems to be a relationship, but then the scammer soon starts asking for money, often for a fake emergency situation like an accident or a medical procedure, or sometimes they say they need money to travel to visit you. And another red flag is they often want you to wire the money or send it by cryptocurrency or prepaid card, or sometimes they'll request access to your bank account. Now, if you know someone who's been involved in one of these romance scams, you probably understand that these scams are very difficult to convince people is a scam because they pull on your heartstrings, and it can be really hard to convince a family member or friend that it is in fact a scam. But if you do notice someone withdrawing a large sum of money to wire it overseas, and that's out of character, and they're wiring it to some new love interest they've never met in person, then please do talk to them, and we'll show you at the end some resources you can share with them so that they can hopefully recognize that it is a scam and not pay money to the scammer. So in terms of protecting against online dating scams, the right side of this slide shows some safeguards. The big thing is not to send money or give access to your accounts to someone you have not met in person. And then it's also good to limit what personal financial information you share with a new love and that you share online generally. Now on the next slide, you'll see some of the top lies that these criminals use. They often pretend that someone is sick or hurt or in jail in order to get you to send money. Sometimes they say they'll teach you how to invest. A trend right now is that they say they'll teach you how to invest in cryptocurrency, but these are actually criminals who, instead of teaching you how to invest, are teaching you how to send them money in cryptocurrency. Sometimes they lie about saying that they're in the military or overseas or on an oil rig, which is why they can't be with you. And they often talk about marriage even before meeting you. So these are the common lies based on the number of times they were found in FTC complaints about romance scams. On the next slide, you'll see some interesting trends about what payment methods romance scammers are requesting. And you'll see that the financial losses are the greatest when cryptocurrency or bank transfers are the method of payment. This is a particularly interesting trend because a few years ago, romance scammers almost always asked for gift cards as payment. And so that was a big red flag we would tell people. But now their methods are changing to include cryptocurrency and bank transfers. Next slide, please. This is one of the CFPB's fraud prevention handouts or placemats. And we have these on a variety of different frauds and scams, and you can use them to pass them out in your communities. They're free. You can get them at consumerfinance.gov/order. And this one is about romance scams. And so this is a good one that you can share if you know someone who's involved in a romance scam, just to let them know the signs of the romance scam. It's also good just to share in your community to try to prevent people from becoming victims of romance scams. So let's turn to tech support scams next. While romance scams are one of the big dollar loss scams, tech support scams tend to be a smaller dollar loss, but they are very prevalent and affect a lot of people. I think probably most people have gotten some sort of pop-up on your computer or phone call at some point saying that you have a virus and that there's a problem and you need to call this 800 number. Those are usually these tech support scams. And what they do is they either ask you to remote into your computer and then they can steal any information you have on the computer. Or sometimes they also, and I see someone saying that this happened to them. You shouldn't be ashamed or embarrassed because it happens to tons of people. And so don't be ashamed or embarrassed. It's a very sophisticated scam and it does go out to a lot of people. So either they do remote into your computer or sometimes they sell you a phony software package. They say they're showing you viruses on your computer, but they're not really. They're just making it up and then asking you to buy an expensive software package in order to prevent against viruses. So to help guard against these tech support scams, some tips are don't give control of your computer to someone who calls you out of the blue. Even if they say they're from Microsoft or Apple, there are people pretending to be from these legitimate companies and scamming people of money through these scams. So don't click on links in unsolicited pop-ups or emails either, because they can download malware, which can take information from your computer. And it's good to keep antivirus software up to date in advance in order to help guard against these scams. And you can think about setting your antivirus to auto update. On the next slide, you'll see another one of our fraud prevention handouts. This is part of the series that I described earlier, and this one is on online safety tips. So it goes over some of the basic tips we're discussing today that are good to prevent not only tech support scams, but other online scams, things like locking your devices and using strong passwords. They generally say longer is stronger, so the password should be at least 12 characters. Also good to limit what personal information you share online and know the red flags of the scams, like some of the red flags that we are discussing today. The research does show that if you know how specific scams work, you're far less likely to lose money to them, because when you see that pop up on your screen, you'll say, oh, wait, I heard about that on the webinar. I'm not going to click on it. And instead, you could turn your computer off and back on, and usually that will make it disappear. So let's move on to investment scams. And these are scams that can happen to people, whether you're a savvy investor or whether you are somebody who is new to investing. Often what happens is somebody will say to put all your money in what they claim to be a no-risk investment, or they may take your money and say, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Sometimes it can be even someone you know from your neighborhood or a community group, so you naturally trust them and they take advantage of that trust. So the next slide here has some red flags to look for in investment scams. If someone's asking to pressure you to act quickly before it's too late, that's a red flag. If they say their results are guaranteed or no risk and leave it all to them, or if they want to explain their payment structure, maybe there's something in it for them. Also think about the old adage about don't put all your eggs in one basket. If someone's asking you to put all your money in one investment, that can be a red flag as well. So to avoid these investment scams, you see some tips on the right side here. I mean, a big thing for all sorts of scams is don't let anyone rush you. Take your time to do your own research. They're trying to rush you in order to get you to make a snap decision under pressure. Another thing that a lot of people don't know is you can check the background of a brokerage firm or investment advisor at finra.org, or at the SEC also has a site, investor.gov, where you can check out an investment advisor before using them to make sure they are legit. You may also want to, when you are looking for an investment advisor, ask them questions like, what is your recourse if you have a problem? And how are you paid, and what is your payment structure? So let's turn next to mortgage closing scams. These are scams that can take your whole life savings, because for most of us, paying for a home is the largest purchase that we may make. So what we know is that scammers are increasingly taking advantage of home buyers during the closing process. And it's basically a sophisticated phishing scam, and they attempt to divert your closing costs and down payment into a fraudulent account by confirming or suggesting last-minute changes to your wiring instructions. Oftentimes, they make it look like the email is coming from your real estate agent or your settlement attorney. So they can involve business email compromise, where the scammers are taking over the email accounts for your real estate agent or settlement attorney to make it look like it's coming from them when it's not. So on the next slide here, you'll see some red flags about these mortgage closing scams. I mean, first of all, if you get any calls or emails with last-minute changes to wiring instructions, that's a red flag, especially if they ask you for financial information by phone or email. The legitimate settlement attorney or real estate agent should be doing those over secure portals. So if you get any call like that, you should call back both your agent and your settlement attorney to verify any changes before sending money to a different place than what you were told. The CFPB also has a mortgage closing checklist that you can use to help you with the mortgage closing process. And we do advise in that to talk to at least 2 people about the closing process, usually the realtor and the settlement agent. Now, if this does happen to you, it's really important to contact your bank or wire transfer company immediately to ask for a wire recall. The sooner you report the error, the more likely you are to be able to recover your money. It's also good to file a complaint with the FBI at ic3.gov, the Internet Crime Complaint Center. They have what's called a fraud kill chain, where they can help freeze the money and get it back for you. So that is a good place to report for this type of scam in particular that involves wiring large sums of money. Next, I want to talk about some imposter scams and identity theft. Now, a lot of the scams we talked about are variations of imposter scams, but there are a few more that I want to cover as well, since we saw those were the top scams being reported right now. One is what's called the family emergency scam, or when it comes to older people, it's often referred to as a grandparent scam. And basically what happens here is someone calls and they say, "Hi, Grandma, I'm in trouble. Don't tell Mom or Dad. I just got thrown in jail in Canada or in another country, and I need you to wire bail money." Or they may say, "I got in a car accident. I need you to wire me money." And they'll be crying, which makes it hard for the person to tell if it's really their grandchild or not. Now with voice cloning, people can make these scams even more believable. So it's really important to know about these scams. And if someone does get a call like this, to verify before sending any money, do call those family members, do check with the grandkid, text them or call them and see if the person really is where they are. And you may find out that the grandchild's, perfectly fine in math class waiting for their next test rather than overseas, stuck in another country needing you to wire money. So it's important to check these out. Another imposter scam is the IRS imposter scam. And these are all covered in our Money Smart for Older Adults materials that I'll talk about at the end. But this is when criminals pretend to be the IRS, and they often may threaten to arrest you or sue you because they say that you owe back taxes. So basically, if somebody gets a call like that, we do advise that they check with the IRS, directly at the IRS, not at the number that this person gives you, but you can go to irs.gov/balance due if you're worried that maybe you think you do owe some back taxes, and you can check there. But don't call back at the number that the person calling you gives you, because that will lead you to the scammer, not to the real IRS. So let's talk a little bit about identity theft. Most people have probably at this point had their information exposed in some sort of data breach, or perhaps had their wallet lost or stolen, or their credit card misused. So identity theft can be any misuse of your personal information, whether it's your social security number, your birth date, your credit card numbers, or passwords. And the next slide here has some tips and to try to safeguard your information. In the hope of preventing identity theft, there's no foolproof way to prevent it. Just like any other crime, it can happen even if you're doing all the right things. But some things that can help is, protect your incoming and outgoing mail, especially at tax time. Don't just leave those tax returns in the outgoing mail. Put them actually in a secure mailbox, or take them right to the post office if you are filing by mail, because people do try to steal tax returns from the mail in order to get personal information. Signing up for direct deposit is another way that you can have less personal information going through the mail where it can be stolen. Also making sure to shred any financial information once you no longer use it, and to use a cross-cutting shredder so it shreds it very finely, not just in the long strips that can be pieced back together. It's also good to monitor your bank accounts and credit card bills for any suspicious charges, and also to check your credit report at least annually at annualcreditreport.com. Now you can get it for free, even weekly, if you want to check it that often. So those are some of the trends that I wanted to mention in terms of fraud and scams. The next thing I want to talk about, is recovery from fraud and scams. Because one thing that's not often talked about is, do people ever get their money back when they lose it to scams? And so at the CFPB, we did a look at this issue and try to find out what are some of the factors that affect whether people get their money back. So on the next slide, you'll see that we've broken it down into 4 different phases that represent the steps that are needed in order to get your money back. One is identifying that the fraud or elder financial exploitation, that's what EFE on the slide refers to here. Identifying that happened, then it's reporting it, then it has to be investigated, and then it gets to the return of funds stage. So you can see how it can be hard to get to recover funds because you have to get through each of these stages. So the next slide shows a little bit more about stage 1, which is identification. And here are some factors that our study identified as affecting whether people might actually identify that the fraud has occurred. The first is the method and amount of a transaction. For example, if you paid by credit card, then you're often more times likely to recover because sometimes the credit card companies themselves flag the fraud. Someone's personal financial situation may affect it too, as might whether the older adult knew the perpetrator. If it's a stranger scam, then you may be more likely to recognize it than if it's a family member. People sometimes don't identify it as fraud or scam, or if they do, they're scared to report it because they don't want their family member to get in trouble. Another factor we heard about was the victim's health, including their physical health as well as their cognitive health, may affect whether they identify the elder financial exploitation. Now, once you identify it, on the next slide, you'll see that there are factors that go into whether this fraud actually gets reported. Again, it can deal with financial factors like the method and amount of the transaction and whether the victim knows the perpetrator and wants to report them or not. We also found that some older adults and people of all ages are ashamed or embarrassed or blame themselves for what happened, so they don't report. In addition, if someone's in poor health, some of those people said that they might not have the time or desire to deal with this financial issue, especially for older adults who said they thought they might just have a few years to live and they didn't want to spend time chasing down the money. Another factor is the training and interactions with service providers and financial institutions can play a role. Now, the third stage about that affects whether people are likely to recover is if the person identifies it and reports it, does the case get investigated? And there are a lot of different factors that come into play, some that I already mentioned, like the method and amount of the transaction and the relationship with the perpetrator. But a couple factors unique to the investigation stage are the complexity in the investigation may affect whether it gets investigated. If it's very complex, especially with overseas defendants, it might not get investigated by prosecutors. Also, if the amount of the loss is low, it may be a lower priority for investigators. And finally, the investigators' training and resources may affect whether the investigation proceeds. Now, if you get through and actually the case gets investigated, then it comes to return of funds. And some factors that we saw in terms of return of funds include the perpetrator's ability to repay. Professionals who we talked to noted that sometimes the perpetrator is caught, but the money is gone, and they might not have other assets to repay the older adults with. Prosecutors also noted that even when the court orders repayment, sometimes there's a repayment plan with very small amounts over a period of years, which makes it hard for the older person to collect their money. So you can see the recovery can be very difficult, and that's all the more reason that it's important to recognize and prevent scams before they happen. So that's part of the reason that we talk about that, and also so that you can recognize the steps that may help lead to recovery if there is fraud loss. So let me now close with some resources before I get to your questions, because we hope you will share this information in your community to help other people prevent fraud and scams. So the first is a program called Money Smart for Older Adults. This is an awareness program that was developed together with the FDIC. And you can order this in bulk, or you can just order a copy for yourself. Has a resource guide for people trying to learn about the topic, and also an instructor guide. So if any of you or people who go out in the community and give fraud prevention presentations, you can use this. It has a PowerPoint with scripted slides that you can use to teach about fraud and scams. And you can find it at consumerfinance.gov/moneysmart. We also have a series of guides to help people make informed decisions about a variety of financial topics like reverse mortgages, financial advisors, pension lump sum payouts, and a lot more. So again, you can go to consumerfinance.gov/older Americans to find more. If you know somebody who has experienced fraud or identity theft, this slide has places you can report it. You can report fraud to the FTC at reportfraud.ftc.gov. And you can report identity theft at identitytheft.gov. It's the federal government's one-stop shop for identity theft victims. And it walks you through all the steps to take to recover from identity theft and gives you a personalized recovery plan, as well as an identity theft report that you can use to exercise your rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act to get information off of your credit report that is the result of identity theft. On the next slide, you'll see the CFPB's complaint reporting mechanism, which is consumerfinance.gov/complaint. If you don't already know, CFPB helps consumers connect with financial companies to understand issues, fix errors, and get direct responses about problems. So you would file a complaint with the CFPB if you've already reached out to the company and they have not given you the recourse that you want, then you can submit a complaint to the CFPB about a financial issue like loans, mortgages, student loans, payday loans, auto loans, or leases, or about credit reporting and debt collection, money transfers, or check cashing services. You can file it here with the CFPB. We'll forward it to the company and work to get a response generally within about 15 days. So again, if it's about fraud or identity theft, you should report to the FTC. If it's about a financial product or service, you can report it to the CFPB. And on the last slide here, I just want to give you, again, the website where you can find all the materials that I talked about today, consumerfinance.gov/older Americans. You can also reach out to our office at olderameriCans@cfpb.gov, or you can reach out to me directly at my email address on the slide. And with that, I am happy to take your questions.
Well, that was a really thorough presentation, Lisa. So I'm just, we have some people thanking you for your time and for the education, the information. Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I hope everyone will take what they learned today and pass it on in their communities.
Great. Just want to give another moment for any more questions. Okay. I'm a slow typer. Just want to leave some space there to get really helpful information. Thank you so much, Lisa, for your time today, and for sharing these resources too. I think this is something that we all need to be aware of, and I think the very first comment that we had, right, is that this sense of embarrassment about the information hopefully will help people move through that and to the people that they care about. I just have a couple things to share from OEE today before we end the webinar. But I just wanted to give you a moment, Lisa, if you had anything else to share.
Just a reminder that you can find all the information I talked about today at consumerfinance.gov/older Americans, and feel free to share it with others. Thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lisa. Yes, this will be posted. We will have the recording and have additional resources and the slides in the email. So just a couple more things today from us. So as part of the Worth and Wealth program, you are able to meet with a financial coach. It is a complimentary session. She is an accredited financial coach. Her name is Oriana Felkowski. This information will also be in our follow-up email. So do not worry if you're not able to grab that QR code, not a problem. We will send this opportunity in the email as well. And coming up next week, so we transition from our Worth and Wealth webinars to Valori Dinero. Please spread the word. These workshops will be in Spanish. All the information will be in Spanish. If this is something that you know someone that might want to participate, we're going to start a series again of 13 workshops. This opportunity will also be in the email. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time and hope that this was valuable information. Thank you, everybody.